Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Akibatum lil Mustaqim. Wala ruhwana ala ila dalimin. Wassalatu salam ala Rasulillahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ahalan wa salam bikum, my dear brothers and sisters. And it's been a while. We just concluded with Ramadan, and this is one of the best Ramadans I had. The temperatures were just right, so we didn't suffer as much during the fasting. When you get older, fasting is far more difficult to achieve, and so you get great azure for that. But I want to also add, as a Muslim, as an African, being here on this continent, I've had a lot of difficulties. But when I came here to Al-Maghrib, there was one family in particular that took me in. And Sesdine and Nadia and the whole family, the children, they took me in as family. And they helped me tremendously with many ordeals that I had. You know how that is when you leave, you're African American, Fulani American, and you leave the Americas. Our government is not happy about that. They want you to stay there for obvious reasons, but they help me and assist me. I spent a day in aid with them, and it was very pleasurable. So I want to take this time to give a shout out to Sesdine and Nadia and the whole family, because they were so kind and generous to me for over the years. Okay, with that said, brothers and sisters, of course, this is late news about what happened in Niger. And I've covered a lot of pundits talking about the situation in Niger in particular. And each one gives this spiel about Niger throwing Americans out and so forth and so on. We see there in the United States, African-American stations and also pundits and Pan-Africanists also chimed in on the situation, talking about what happened in Niger. And but there's some glaring mistakes here that we should be pondering. And I'm going to get into this because, as you heard me talk, and those who follow me, and those who should follow me, and those who would like to follow me, please subscribe to my station. But I'm going to get down into it because, again, brothers and sisters, anytime you talk about the Sahel in particular, you have to lay the foundation of the ethnic loyalties. Okay, because that is important. That is an important aspect. And so I'm happy to see that Niger took the stance that nobody else will stand. They threw the Americans out. Now, what we mean by that, we're not talking about the tourists. We're not talking about those who are working in factories and so forth. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the government apparatus that has caused so many problems on the continent for 400 years. And West Africa in particular, because they took 12 million of us out of here. So Niger took the step to clean up a mistake, and they did. Well, no one else wants to throw the Americans out. Again, we're talking about the government and their apparatuses, the military, intelligence agencies, and so forth and so on. But they did. So we have to give them their kudos. So let's start here. Niger removed the Americans, the military out of the country, and now are sporting a healthy relationship with Russia. This is the other part, brothers and sisters. We have another Tubaib government, the Russians. In regards to the Russians and the black man, they have a whole different relationship with the black man, the African, than do the Europeans, the Western Europeans, other Eastern Europeans, the Americans, the Canadians, and so forth down the line. And so when the Americans have had their way for 400 years, they have arrogantly just killed their way through. When if they don't like something, they overthrow the government. When they don't like dissidents who talk against them, they kill them. When the other calamities arise in their minds, they go to do other things. They introduce many different things into the country. And again, if you heard me say many times, as powerful as the United States is, if its moral compass was correct and not with the devil, it could actually rule the world and rule it justly. But because it's in with the devil, and because they're not Muslim on top of that, they arrogantly have come to Africa and have talked arrogantly and have been ran roughshod through Africa for centuries. And this situation here, the Niger government talked about how arrogant they were when they talked to them. And if you look at the pundits, even in the United States, some are Black brothers and sisters who talk on their stations, and they do a beautiful job. But one of the things they lack is talking about the American security apparatus, because that is where the destructive nature of our governments and why we can't prosper. If you understand what is in these contracts, I think it would bring many people to the streets, but they keep this secret. One of the most glaring is it's mind-boggling how any of these governments, from North Africa all the way down, can accept this. Under the security agreements, the American soldiers, security apparatus, those who they hire, the puppets and so forth, proxies, criminals, all have immunity. That means whatever the Americans command them to do inside our countries, you can't touch them. And Americans can commit crimes and do many different things, and the host government can't touch them. Yet and still, the Americans deem me, anyone else they don't like, and they want to charge them with crimes, then they're supposed to give those Africans and Muslims to them. This is one of the arrogance that they put in their programs. Niger saw that, and he said, no more. Even though they will lose millions. Now the Russians have come in. The Russians, instead of coming in with a big stick, instead of coming in arrogantly, instead of coming in talking crazy and uncouth to Black men, they try to be partners with them. Let's look further into this. Putin even showed he has no animosity towards the Black man by unveiling his vault, where he revealed before all of the Tuba governments who are upset, the Vatican upset, many other Africans too, who all believe that Jesus or Jesu, alayhi salatu salam, was a Tuba. He opened up his vault and showed all of the pictures and documents of documentation showing that Jesus, Jesu, alayhi salatu salam, Isa, as we know him in the Quran, was a Black man. And he has these documents to prove this. And he shows that the original Jews, Hebrews, were Black. When Putin steps into Africa and his spokespersons and diplomats, again, as you heard me talk about, you see how they are treated and how they treat the Africans. They don't come arrogantly to them and threaten them. They don't come to Niger. They don't come to Ghana. They don't come to any other African states and try to force homosexuality, force whoredom, force all kind of other things that destroy the government down their throats. They don't do that. So it's easy for someone to warm up to this man, to Russia and to Putin, because what Putin has shown. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm just giving you the outline on what our brothers most likely are looking at. Now, we're Muslims, majority of us who follow me. Does the Quran support such relationships like this? Can Niger succeed using the financial market governed by the disbelievers? Okay, now, let's look at the first one here. Yes and no. Subhanahu wa ta'ala does not support any relationship with any of the 57 Muslim states, or is it 54? I can't remember. I always get that number mixed up. But they don't support, Subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't support it. And our Prophet ﷺ made the conditions about our relationships with disbelievers. The Americans in particular, we cannot have agreements with them because they're killing Muslims. They're aiding others to kill Muslims. They have programs against Muslims. They go into Africa, Muslim states, and they wreak havoc in the governments, and they go after populations, and they have people in those states go after Black people, especially like me, especially scholarly body who come to the continent. They refuse to give them scholarships. I mean, citizenship. They make their lives ordeal very difficult, and they have immunity doing it. The Russians don't do that. Matter of fact, as we talk about this, we have African Americans. You heard me talk about this before. About 2 years ago, there was a beautiful article talking about, and a YouTube telecast talking about African Americans, Putin telling them to leave the hellhole in the United States, and all of that discrimination and all of that drive-by, driving while Black, shopping while Black. He said, you come to Russia. He said, we don't do that here. And we've had African Americans come. Some notable African Americans have been given citizenship immediately. As minute they come into the airport, Putin himself, out of respect, give them their citizenship papers and passport. Do the Americans do this? No, they don't. They do the exact opposite of that. They put pressure on the Sahel states and others not to accept Black people, especially from the United States. They come in, but they make it difficult. Look what's going on in Ghana today. Look what's happening in Ghana. You see what they're doing? Because who's behind the scenes orchestrating this? Is it the Russians? No, it's the Americans. So Subhanahu wa ta'ala agrees to deal with the disbelievers on an even basis, meaning that we can have these mithaqs, we can have these agreements with disbelievers, as long as they follow certain guidelines. The Americans cannot follow those guidelines. So you cannot have relationships in that regard with them. Again, brothers and sisters, we're not talking about the tourists. We're not talking about that. You heard my class before. I gave you the 4 conditions about disbelievers. 3 of them, we do not fight them. Okay, we don't. But the 4th one, we do fight. The military and so forth, we pray against them, we talk against them, we urge that that our governments don't let them have their bases on our lands. And we do not accept their charity, because their charity comes with a lot of different calamities that will hurt you. And it's hurt us. Look what has happened to Ghana, because they refuse to accept, and now the government, the president is weighing about the homosexual bill. In Uganda, what happened when they said no to it. And they're going down the line trying to force down our throats, this type of thing. The Russians are not doing this. See? So we can have a relationship with the Russians as long as the Russians toe the line. Meaning, if they are entering into wars with Muslims for no reason, just because they are Muslims, under the guise of terrorism, that's a different story. The Americans enter wars. They go to the governments and they force the governments to make turmoil. Why do you think the Sahel is so volatile? Is it because of the Russians? No. It's because of the Americans, because the Americans have pumped in billions into the Sahel and in West Africa in particular, and North Africa as well. And they told the governments, I want you to go after people like me. I want you to go after your scholars. I want you to go after the main body who promotes Islam. And they did it. And now we have full-blown insurgencies in 25 African states. Niger is suffered the same consequences. The former president and his predecessors all took the money from the Americans and said, okay, I'm going to go after the Futafula community because I know they're devout Muslims. And they did. And they forced him to fight back. And then this is where the terror it's all a game. It's a deadly game when you deal with anything in the Sahel. It's not a funny matter. It's a deadly game. So in Niger, the government was told, this is what we want you to do. And all the while, the Americans, the French, and others took out the wealth. 90% of the wealth was gone out of Niger, and our brothers and sisters in Niger were eating out of trash cans, drinking swallowed water, living in horrible conditions. See, so we can have a relationship with the Russians because the Russians come in not as conquerors, not as colonizers, but as a partner, equal partner. Now, as you heard me say, the Russians will kill anybody. I don't care if they're white or black, if the money's right. And if the situation benefits them, they will kill other Tuba. They have shown that. And in Niger, they're warming up to the government in Niger. And matter of fact, there's reports about they're sending their military in there, some of their special forces, and also giving them hardware to defend themselves. And we have to also make mention here of my country here, Al-Maghrib. Al-Maghrib, quiet. Wait, Al-Maghrib operates not like the others. Al-Maghrib is very, very smart. The government, the king is very, very smart and shrewd in his dealings. He doesn't make a telecast, and Islamically, he's correct. He has done things under the radar to assist the Nigerian government, right? Assist them. When the others was trying to sanction them, the king here in our country went under the radar to give them subsidies. That's the beautiful thing. That's what Africans are supposed to do. Was it a good thing to remove the American military out of Niger? Yes, it was. And I urge all the governments to do the same thing. Reason why is this. The insurgency cannot, the flames of insurgency is continue to go. How many Africans, how many Fulani, how many Hausa, how many Tuareg, and how many Arabs are joining these groups to fight the Americans and the military and the security apparatus in the Sahel alone? We have every day, we have people running to those groups. If you keep the military there, the Americans there and the French and all that, this is not going to stop because the Americans they cannot defeat this. It's too big, it's too wide, it's too incendiary. You see what has happened. When they go over here to try to put out a fire, another one is created. And the Sahel runs from the Atlantic to the Red Sea. So they can't stop this. And one of the contentions of the Mujahideen group, I don't care if they're Tuareg or they're Arab or they're Futafula, is saying, look, you have an unhealthy relationship with the disbelievers that is against the Quran, against Sharia law. And we cannot deal with you because you are under the orders of them. And we know this is haram. We know this is kufr, shirk billah. We know this. This is what the Mujahideen is saying to our governments in the Sahel in particular. So by removing the French and the Americans, I don't know, boy, when I write sometimes, I know this is not right. I don't know how sometimes this thing comes out. I write a word and it changes it. But anyway, the security, the security apparatus inside the Sahel is not secure because of the colonizers and the Tuba presence. It's not secure. I don't care what they put out there. It is not secure. We have killings, mass murder is going all over through the Sahel, and it continues to go on. Russians have added to this situation by joining the fray, especially in Burkina Faso. And you heard me talk about Burkina Faso, where There were 500 here almost now, 2 years ago, how fast time, where they killed our community, the Fulani community, killed 500, and they killed 300, and it's been going all the way down the line. The Niger government, by throwing the Americans out, it leaves them kind of naked, meaning they don't have anybody out there to help them. This should help them in regards to the table. Now they can bring the three aforementioned groups, the Arabs, the Tuareg, and the Fulani, and bring them to the table to negotiate. And bring the scholars there. Don't bring the Tubab. Bring the scholars at the table and let them mediate. Because one of the things that the Mujahideen, you heard me say 1,000 times, is they warm up to the words of Allah. They warm up to the Sharia Allah. They warm up to the Quran Kareem. They warm up to the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu salam. That's what they hear. When they hear this, their hearts melt. But when they see a Tubab standing there talking crazy to them, and they know, or a Tubab standing behind a black man, and they know the orders coming from another Tubab government, that's they walk away from the table and they continue to fight. What about the growing rift between the Futafula, the Tuareg, and the Arabs? A lot of this, brothers and sisters, if you heard me talk weeks back here, I gave you the thing about Andalus. There was no difference between the Fulani, the Sinike, the Wolof, and the Hapular, and so forth and so on, and the Tuareg. They were fighting in jihad together for centuries. They married each other's women for centuries, to the point to where a lot of times you can't tell the difference between who is Tuareg, who's Amazigh, and who's Fulani. You saw my pictures and some of the proof I've given you talking about this. This rift is growing wider, especially in Niger. And a lot of this is because what has happened is the corruption in the government. The government takes money, and their marching orders is whoever they put in power. If they put the Arabs in power, they discriminate heavily against the Fulani and the Hausa. When the Hausa is put into power, they begin to go after the Tuareg and the Arabs. And this has been going on. And everybody has their beef with the Fulani. Can the Russians bring peace to this country? No, cannot. Their agreements can assist them. Their agreements are best served right now to protect them from the other Tubab governments, rogue governments like the Americans and the French and the British. Those three in particular. And some of the Germans and others like that too. Belgium, that part they can assist them because they're Tubab. They know how the Tubab thinks. So when the Russians come in and start talking to you about the Americans and about the British and the French, what they're doing, they're telling them their deep secrets because they're Tubab. And the Tubab knows the Tubab the best, not a black man. Black man knows some aspects of the Tubab, but it's another Tubab. As my dad used to tell me many times, he said, when there's a bunch of racists here and one breaks away and begin to talk, you listen because he's in the inner circle. So the Russians can bring peace in one regard to protect them from the marauding of the Americans, because the Americans are not going to sit by to be thrown out. You've seen with the Congress in the United States, they were almost arrogant, like they own Niger. You can't do that. That's what basically they put in an amendment. You can't do that. You can't throw us out. As though we have no right in this country. Let me take a break here. Let me see what we got here, our brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother Mustafa. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, my dear brother. Yes, how you doing, my dear brother HD? I heard that, let me see here. I heard that air defense fiscal great country U.S. drone base that was being. Yes, you're right. Yes, this is true. But you know, my dear brother, you think about this, okay? You think about this. Why is it that it's always terror when you have groups like the Futafula and the Tuareg and the Arab, or try to throw the Americans out, or the French or the Tubab out, and they try to correct the government who is working under them as proxies? When they do that, it's called terror, and they use those terror bases to fight. And most of the time, they kill innocent people. If the Americans and all of them have killed all of the Mujahideen, we wouldn't be standing here. But every time you see the body count, just like this happened in Gaza, it's always a civilian. Our Fulani kinfolk are being killed off by these drone bases and so forth. They drop bombs and then Americans put on a list, oh, we just killed Yahya and his group. They didn't kill my group. They killed my mother and father and my wife and my children, but they did not kill the Mujahideen group. See? And so these defense systems, all this military madness going in to kill other black people, all this could be stopped by right governance and ending the corruption and spreading the wealth among the people. If you do that, there'd be no Mujahideen. There would be no Mujahideen fi sabilillah to fight against the government. It wouldn't be, because they have no platform now. Right now, our governments give them a platform. One, because the Tubab is there. Secondly, our governments are corrupted. Third, the wealth is only going to 1% of the population while the rest of us suffer. And then third, we have the terror, the so-called terror. Now, who's killed more people since 9/11 than the Americans? The Americans have killed millions upon millions, okay? And have been instrumental also in supporting what's happening in Gaza. Look what they've killed, over 30-some thousand. They have got they have a playbook and a blueprint on how to kill Muslims, just like they did slavery. They had a playbook on how to enslave the black man for all those hundreds of years in America and the West Indies and so forth, and in Europe. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Yeah, how you doing, my dear sister? Thank you for showing up. I really appreciate it. I appreciate it tremendously, my dear brother Mustafa. Thank you. This is another brother, Moroccan brother, that I met years back, and he's been a very integral part of my family. He does just about everything I need. If I need something done, he runs to do it, and he's always been there for me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, my dear brother. Jazakallah khairan, my dear brother Mustafa. So, what about the growing rift? We have to stop that, brothers and sisters. In the Sahel, we have to stop this. In the Sahel and in the northern tiers of the Western African states, coastal states, the northern tier, we have a lot of Fulani there. We have a lot of problems where we have people who are the jealousy and so forth in these groups, talking of other groups against the Fulani. This has to be subsidized. We have to suppress this. We have to do something to bring this. But we know this, the devil instrument is behind that, because we know the Americans are always pushing, because their security agreements, they have veto power. And this is where nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about the security agreements, but it allows the Americans, in particular in this regard, to do the things they're doing, causing this rift. See, so this is something that, and what should the Mujahideen group, in wake of all these developments? Mujahideen group, what I suspect is watching. And they want to see how the new government in Niger handled the Tubab. They want to see this. And if they're going to come to the table and bring scholars to the table, as you heard me say earlier here. So they're watching and waiting. ECOWAS and the AU, along with their colonial masters, are being exposed for their wickedness and treachery. The Niger government has exposed them, and other governments have been exposing the ECOWAS and the AU. ECOWAS is nothing more than a puppet of the Americans, somewhat of the French, but mostly of the Americans. They can't do anything without calling the United States and the AU as well. They're flunkies, they're proxies for them. And their colonial masters run the show. Niger understands that. Burkina Faso understands that. Mali understands that. Guinea, the president of Guinea, he even understands this situation here. Unfortunately, we have many other governments who don't. Now, I will talk about this inshallah ta'ala about Senegal. You know what has happened? We have a new, brilliant, young African Muslim brother who's taking the reins of Senegal. I'll talk about that in another segment, inshallah ta'ala bi'ithnillah. He has to be talked about, and we should get to know this young, impressionable Black African leader, Muslim. Very, very, very astute, very, very brilliant, very, very wise young man that's taken over Senegal. And I'll talk about him, inshallah ta'ala. And also, brothers and sisters, when I'm on this subject, I will be talking about the doggone people. You heard me talk right before Ramadan. I gave you some clips about the doggone people and how they have come up with stuff that just is mind-boggling about the interstellar space. It just mind-boggling. That's all I can say. But I'll get into them in the next segment as well, and I'll talk about their proofs, what they have, and whatnot, and whatnot. I know many will say, "Well, why you cover this and that?" Reason why I do this, brothers and sisters, because the African people in particular, we have got a bad rap. You think about this. Do you know how much scholarship we had on this continent? We have a lot of it. Not only just Timbuktu, but we have others who are brilliant. And we have those who have somehow or another, subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving them a gift about the interstellar space. We should talk about our African brothers who possess this unique knowledge. We should not keep that quiet. As you heard me say, all of us should be well-rounded in our education, not only about the Tubab subjects and about how to deal with the Tubab, but we should understand our history as well. Salam alaikum, my dear brother. Thank you for showing up. I really appreciate it. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Yeah, brother, how you doing? Thank you very much for showing up here. What was the Fulani before Islam? Because they are the biggest tribe in Africa. They are definitely, yes, no matter. This still not off topic because the Fulani are prevalent in Niger and all through the Sahel. No doubt about that. All the way across to Eritrea, we have Fulani people, even in Tanzania, in the Congo, and Rwanda. The Fulani family is everywhere, even to the north. They're everywhere. The Fulani people before Islam were nomadic, of course, tending their cattle, and they were worshiping worshiping in a traditional African religions that they brought from Egypt. That's right. So they were in and out of Tawheed in Egypt as all the other Africans. The other Africans I'm talking about, I want to do a segment on this. I'm going to pray to Subhanahu wa ta'ala. I just give you some of this. Well, the contention about Egypt, and you see all the white racists, even Egyptians, the light-skinned Egyptians, many of them are racist as can be. Too, now their hatred for black people have come out, even though they have black heritage. All this is starting to come out. Now, brothers and sisters, we starting to have DNA, and we have con artists on the Tubab side, and some of the Arabs and some of the Egyptians who profess to be Arabs themselves when they're not Arabs. They're Mozab people. And they claim that they have DNA proof. Well, let me tell you something when you're seeing this, brothers and sisters, so you can understand this. What these slick individuals have done, they've taken mummies of ancient Greeks, the colonizers, invaders, right? They died, they lived there, and they died in Egypt. They took that DNA to try to prove that the ancient Egyptians were white. But the traditional mummies of the black folk, the kings and queens and so on, they didn't touch them. I wonder why. Well, they start to do DNA on the mummies of the royal families of Egypt, the dynasties running all even from my ancestors. You heard me talking about Shabaka, who ran the 24th dynasty along with Pienke and with Zaharka. All that DNA, they come up with one common genotype. That genotype is found among what? The West Africans. And among so-called African Americans and Caribbeans. not among the Tubab, not among the Arabs. That's interesting, isn't it? So I want you to be aware of that. When you see these white racists get on there talking about they took DNA, what they have done, yes, they took DNA of Roman families, Greek families, and other Tubab invaders who came into Egypt to colonize, right? They died there, yes, in wars, and they died there naturally and so forth and so on. They took that DNA and say, look, you see this? This is a genotype of Europeans, but they were not the royal mummies, like in Giza and other places like this. They didn't take that DNA. When the scientists went to the royal mummies and began to do the DNA, they were blown away. They found genotypes that only are prevalent among Black folk. So the ancient Egyptians were Black. And we've proven now again by DNA. It's the E1, E1B, I forgot. But this is prevalent among African Americans as well. See, so this is something. And the Futafula community were nomadic, and they were doing many things. But when Islam came again around the late 600s and so forth and so on, they accepted it and they ran with it, as you heard me talk about that. So they were worshiping, but they were nomadic. They were in the Sahara with the Tuareg and with the Amazigh, and they lived there and they minded their cattle and so forth and so on. So we know that for a fact. I heard that the doggone from Kemp. Yes. Okay. Yes. I'm going to talk about the doggone, inshallah ta'ala. I'm going to give you some information about that. They have great, extreme knowledge of, yes, they have this. And I never been to this mosque. Matter of fact, brothers and sisters, I doubt if I could even travel to any country inside Africa anymore. When I first came, I did, but not now with my status. The Americans would have made it to the point I can't travel anywhere to nobody, even those countries where I have heritage there, like Ghana and even now Sudan, other places, even Sierra Leone. I will not be able to travel there. They will not let me in. I have to tell it. And even Mali, I cry and cringe. I want so much to go to Mali because I want to go to those libraries, because those libraries are keys to the interstellar space, because we have people talking about that. Also, I wanted to visit my people, the Dogon, because I have Dogon heritage, which I exposed here a couple of weeks back when they did a new testing. They found that my origins of Fulani, because I'm Fulani, came from Nigeria. From Nigeria, they migrated to Guinea, and then from Guinea, they went into Maghreb, as we know, Morocco. But I also have the Dogon heritage as well. So they are interesting people. I will get to that in another segment. The Pharaohs, Yoruba, yes. Again, there's so much scholarship, and that's why I wish all of us to start to discover our ancient history. It is so rich. Okay, it is so rich, and it's astonishing how much information that our elders had. Astonishing. And one more, and I'll get back to this. Okay, Benin. Yes, yes. I'm going to get into this part because we need to talk about that to clear up some matters, because I know when we go to YouTube and all of a sudden we see a Tubab, we see a racist Arab get on the Tubab, get on YouTube, and he start talking crazy about the ancient Egyptians look like me, the ancient Egyptians were white, ancient Egyptians had blonde hair, all this type of thing, and we just turn it off because we can't fight them back because we have no information. We do have information because we have now scholarly bodies, even among the Tubab and Jews, who've come and examined the royal mummies in particular. And they differ greatly from the Europeans. The European modern scientists were slick. They took ancient communities who had came to Messer, the Romans and the Greeks, and used their type to say this is how the ancient Egyptians. My great grandfather Shabaka was never a white man. He was a black man. And my people came across Egypt as Fulani and Mazab people. They were black. They were never white. See, so we should clear that up. Okay, now there'll be, brothers and sisters, I can't harp on this. There'll be little success in the corridor of the Sahel, but in Africa, period. If Allah's name is not supreme in the land, and our governments must utilize the wisdom of our scholars and wise men. Brothers and sisters, even our astute young African leaders are already falling into the trap of not mentioning Subhanahu wa ta'ala's name and using his governance. They will not succeed. I hate to say that. Until they put Subhanahu wa ta'ala in their heart and they put people around them who have Subhanahu wa ta'ala's name and his sunnah and his sharia in their hearts, where they implement this to the people and give the people its rights, we're not going to succeed. And all these financial markets, we can destroy that. That's why the Americans, the Russians, not the Russians, but the Western Europeans, the Canadians, and others like this want to keep you in Western financial markets because they can destroy you and keep you poor. When you take the Sharia Allah, Subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless you. Some of the richest of all empires were what? Muslim and black. Under the reign of Subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can return to that. And it's going to happen. But not maybe perhaps in my lifetime, but it will happen. Because we're starting to move towards that. We're starting to have our African brothers to talk against the West, which they should be doing it, but they have to implement this with programs, not only with talk. Niger we must applaud them in their efforts to secure their borders and meddling and treachery from the colonial powers. We have to give Niger its credit because Niger did step up, even though it may hurt them. But right now they said this is the best for us. We must throw out the French. We must throw out the Americans. We must stay distant from the UN. And we just hope that the commander who's running the government of Niger goes to Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Go to your scholarly body, go to the ulama and the fuqaha among the Muslims and bring them to your governance to help them to govern Niger and bring the wealth back. All of this wealth that's in there, Niger, everybody should be sporting Mercedes-Benz. There should be no poverty. Everyone should be put in their homes. Their homes will be free. But here, 90% of the wealth is gone to the tuba. And only 10% or so is left inside the country. That's unacceptable. They must read, implement, and champion and adhere to the Sharia law. But this government and the rest of the Sahel are refusing Allah's commands. We have beautiful, young, brilliant African leaders. And many of them recite the Quran beautifully, like our new president here in Senegal. Brilliant young brother. Beautiful recitation of the Quran. Beautiful. The question is, will he implement Subhanahu wa ta'ala's command? Will they implement this in Niger and Mali, and Burkina Faso? That remains to be seen. If they don't, we'll be talking about a new bunch will come in later on in a couple of years to come. So in retrospect, brothers and sisters, we are living in hard times, and we have to talk about this. And it's best that we listen to many different segments of the population. We listen to what comes out of America, because we should know and learn about what they're trying to do and what they should be doing and what our people should be doing. And it's important. But on the same token, we need to get the right news. And nobody talks about this American agreement that's killing the continent. Nobody talks about that. The American security agreement is a killer, and it's reft with arrogance. And we cannot have an agreement according to the Sharia of Allah and the Sharia of our Prophet alayhi salatu salam, we cannot with the Americans because they're killing Muslims. They're working against Muslims. They're discriminating against Muslims in their own land. We cannot have a relationship with them. Meaning mithaq. Again, not with the population. We're not talking about that. We're talking about with the government and its apparatus. We cannot. The people can come and go. As you heard me say many times, we cannot fight the tourists. We cannot fight. There's the four, and this, they actually say about 6 or 7, but I listed 4, and there's 3 of them we cannot fight them. But the 4th one we can, and that's the ones, the military apparatus and the intelligence agencies, we fight them because of what they're trying to do. Again, what I mean by fight, I'm not talking about me or you or somebody just pick up a gun to go shoot. No, we're not talking about that. Meaning that we do best we can to advise, pray against them, and ask for subhanahu wa ta'ala to put wisdom into the hearts of our leaders so that way they'll get enough gumption and fortitude to throw them out. And we see this happen in Niger. We have to take our kudos to them because they did have the gumption and the fortitude to throw the Americans out. Okay, I don't believe religions, but I love your history and the truth about us. Yeah, okay, brother. Each one, in the Quran, subhanahu wa ta'ala said there's no compulsion. We cannot force anybody to the religion of Islam. And each one of us will have to decide on how we govern ourselves because subhanahu wa ta'ala has given man free reign on the earth. If you want to believe, you can. If you want to disbelieve, you can disbelieve, but you'll suffer in the hereafter. He's made this mention in all of his books. I don't care if you're talking about the Vedas in India. I don't care if you're talking about the Shinto. All have some forms. Yes, they're mushrikeen, but they all have some forms of a supreme being, and they believe that that we will return to him, in the future. So this is important. Each one of us. You will never hear me try to say to anybody that they must come to Islam in this regard. They cannot. But those Muslims who are governing us, they must use subhanahu wa ta'ala's law. Because if you look at history, my dear brother, you look at Africa and look at some of the richest of all the kingdoms. Ghana was one of them, and they weren't Muslim. But in the later stages, they had a large Muslim population, and he had the king of Ghana at the time had a lot of advisors, and he had a lot of agreements with all the upcoming, especially with the Mujahideen group, the Murabitun, if you heard me talk about that. So they were very close to Islam, and they were very wealthy. But some of the wealthiest empires on this continent were Muslim. So we can't get past that. But each one of us can have our thoughts about, well, we don't like this, we like this. I prefer juju, or person say, I like Ifa, or I want voodoo, I want Orissa or whatever. That's up to each one of us. I'm waiting to see what religion. I'm waiting to see what the religion does for the people. Oh, I just mentioned that. If you study the history, brothers and sisters, you look at Mali and look at Timbuktu. If you look at all of the mineral wealth, but look at the knowledge. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you look at Timbuktu and the suppositories that they have there, you look at our African brothers in Mali, okay, under Islam, were doing eye surgery, doing heart surgery. They were doing surgery on cataracts. They were doing others. They were charting the heavens. And they were rich. They became very rich under Islam. How you doing, my dear brother? Thanks for showing up. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, it's been a while because of Ramadan, and out of respect for Ramadan, and plus you have a lot of things. You have a lot of worship, and I'm fasting, and I'm an old man now, so I don't have as much energy, as I used to many years ago. So when I fast, it takes a lot out of me, because now at this time of the year we have a short window between the last prayer and the first prayer of the day. It's a very short window, so you have to eat, and then you make your worship, and then you got to go to sleep for a couple hours. After your worship, you only have a couple hours, then you have to get back up to eat again, because once the start of the new day when you hear the adhan, you got to stop eating for the rest of the day until the Maghrib. So it's very difficult. So this is why I took that time to I didn't want to speak because I wanted to sometimes, but I was tired and I had other things. I'm reading the Quran because I had a program with the Quran, what I'm supposed to do in 30 days. And it's very difficult to concentrate on other things, other matters. When I got my program with the Quran, I had to finish. Okay, yeah. And I want to also add, brother, sister, I'll be closing here, that all of us should be mindful of our actions the best way we can. We all make mistakes. We should be mindful of our actions, but we should also look for the betterment of our continent. I don't care what ethnic group you come from. I don't care if you're Hausa. I don't care if you're Fulani or Tiv or Yoruba. I don't care if you Kupeli in Liberia. I don't care if you Mende there in Sierra Leone. I don't care if you Mandinka in Senegal. It doesn't make no difference. Or Fulani in the Gambia. It doesn't make a difference. We should pray for our continent, for it to be free, and we get our wealth back so we can have prosperity here on this continent. We should all pray for that. And each one of us must do our part to do this. And we're starting to see openings here. We're starting to see Niger. The new Senegal president made a beautiful speech talking about he wants the colonial apparatuses out of his country. And he's also talking about Africa. We see now Burkina Faso, our brother, has been talking a lot about about many aspects. And he made a good speech here the other day. It almost had me laughing out of my seat out of happiness and pride. He was talking about the colonial masters and the house Negroes. I was so happy to hear him say this. I'm still smiling when I here's an African leader finally talking it as it is. It's like grassroots. He said, talking about the colonial masters and so forth, and about the house Negroes who support them. It was a beautiful speech. I was happy to see that. So we're starting to see this. Remember here, months back here, President of Guinea, when he went before the UN, talked against democracy because democracy hurts us. And it's true. We cannot survive under this. It's a detriment to our well-being here on this continent. And he talked against that. So we're starting to see these things pop up. How you doing, my dear brother? Thank you very much. Thank you for showing up. Thank you very much. Yes, it's been a while. Thank you very much for showing up. So, brothers and sisters, I'm going to get ready to conclude here and say I'll be talking here in a couple of days from now. I'll talk about Senegal and the doggone people. Our brother here talked about the doggone people. I'm going to tell you something. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. I'm going to tell you, I spent some time reading in my time during Ramadan as well about the doggone people. And I want to tell you something. Not all doggone people are animists. We have a segment of population among the animists who are Muslim. I'll get more into that. I'll get deeper into them so you can understand them. You can understand your African brothers, because you should. The doggone people are a very unique group. Yes, they're animist majority, but there are Muslim elements, and I'll get into that at another time. And I would love to see for us to support one another we can. Spread my tapes, those who like my talk, and give this especially to our younger brothers and sisters, because they're lacking our history and our wisdom, and they should be brought up to speed. Because following the West is one thing, and when you don't know anything about your history, that's not good. We're not going to be blessed, because your generation will come to take over. You have to be made worldly. Yes, you have to have the worldly education, but you should also understand how our ancestors ran this continent before the colonial period. See, and that's something we're lacking. That's why I try to fill the void by giving this and whatnot. And please press like everybody else, to like everyone. Yes, we have to do something to yeah. See, they finally got to me here. Let me see here. Let me get out of this. I'm hoping if I get cut out, brothers and sisters, please forgive me. But my enemy is always doing things to take out my programs. So let me see if I can get back out of here. Stop the cam. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I want to see what my brother said. Africa was black before it was anything else. Surgeries were happening at the time. Yes. Okay. It come together regardless of religion, and we won no matter what. Well, yes, we had scholarship well before Islam came. No doubt about that, brother. No doubt we had that, and we had brilliant doctors who never studied under Islam or any other religion, and they were brilliant in what they had done. They had made discoveries without Islamic knowledge. Yes, no doubt about that. No doubt. But you cannot erase what has happened from 7/11 to the late 1800s. You can't erase that because of the scholarship and all the riches that developed and the notoriety and whatnot. This is why the Europeans were attracted more so, would cause them to want to colonize because of the rich and the material wealth and also the knowledge. When the Europeans were in the Dark Ages, where did they go? They went to Islamic universities, especially in Mali and in Maghreb. That's where they went to study, and also in Tunisia as well, under the Islamic banner, because that's where the knowledge was, all of the worldly knowledge, everything at this time. So yes, we had accomplishments before that, but you can't take away what happened between 7/11 and the 1800s, all the way to that. That's about what, that's 1800 years. You cannot, because in that period of time, the growth of our people, literacy, wealth, knowledge skyrocketed. Why do you think the Europeans came here? Because of all of the scholarship that they found, all the riches they found, and they wanted to dismantle it and take it over, which they have. You see what they have done to it, to us ever since. So yes, we are before 7/11, no doubt we had that. We had brilliant Africans from all over the place who had many gifts, no doubt about that. But we had to admit, from 7/11 to the 1800s, the Islamic factor was so great. It was so great. How you doing, my dear brother? Kwesi, how you doing? Salam alaikum. Musa, Musa turned a stone into water, meaning projects, turn water into stone and missiles. Yeah, I read about that. You should. I've talked about this in my other shows. This is why I like to see brothers follow me, because, I try to give you knowledge that you're not getting from most of the YouTubers, and also you see some stuff in Google. We have brilliant scholarship that's taking place, but a lot of times they're missing many things. And I got to mention our Ghanaian brother here and his book. Excuse me here for a minute. You see this book, brothers and sisters? You have to get this, because this book here, and I think you can get it online now, online and whatnot. You have to get this, because the names that were given to Akhenaten, and he broke it down. These names are God names and whatnot. He broke, God from Eastern Ghana. I was in Eastern Ghana in 2002. I found the God language very difficult, and I heard others, brothers and sisters from Accra, who would talk to me about when I went there, they have a difficult time. They cannot speak or understand the God language. But our brother here, he broke down what happened in ancient Egypt. You have to get this book. This is for all of us who needs the education. He broke it down. He talked about the Jews, what happened to them, who they really were. And he talked about the DNA testing of the Jews, who they really were. You must get this book, brother. Please get this book here and read this from cover to cover. It will enlighten you. He shows you the African names of the kings of Egypt, not the names that we see today, like Akhenaten. All these are Greek. You should read what he says about these names, and he broke it down for us. Very beautiful book. You should read it. And and whatnot. In Egypt, boy, that is a topic. I'm very close because I'm a Muslim. I have to be very careful when I talk about some things that it's not dealing with Tawheed. I have to be, careful. You understand what I mean by that. I have to be very careful in that regard. But Akhenaten was in Tawheed. We can talk about him, and we can talk about Shabaka and the others, my ancestors who reigned, who brought in Tawheed and so forth and so on. So, Egypt is a very, very complex, history, and is very widespread. So I want to get into that. I have to seek the permission from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to see if it's okay. Brother, I am a peace. Yes. Thank you. Yes, brother, you got it. It is a Khan name. Yes. Thank you for mentioning this here. That's true. This is true. And all these African, Egyptian pharaohs, they had names, and the names are not, because the Greeks could not pronounce their names, so they butchered these names. Just like anybody, we don't speak Japanese, right? You hear a Japanese person and you hear his name, you don't know how to write it, so you write it in the way you do it, so you butcher his name. See, you know what I mean? So this is what has happened. They came there and they butchered the names, and those names have stood all these centuries, and it's wrong. Preston, if you could show a video on book recommendations. Thanks for the great video. That is kind of, in some ways, kind of hard to do, because a lot of the books that I use are written in the Arabic language, and it's very difficult to, because most of us don't speak the Arabic language, and to give you things, and there's other books now. I brought to this one it's an online that deals with scholars about history, especially Africa, and they talk about many different subjects. I read a lot of that, and that is in English. But a lot of the stuff that, the history and a lot of the things like this is written in the Arabic language. And unfortunately, most of us cannot, read that. Thank you. Thank you very much, my dear brother. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. And I appreciate your kind words. I really appreciate that. And Kwesi is Kushe, and which means Kush. Okay, thank you for telling me that, because we know that I know brothers in Ghana with this last name. I met brothers, with this first name, Kwesi. I met brothers also in Ghana with your name as well, and I always figured it was a Khan. You know what I mean? But it could be from Eastern, because when I look at Kwesi, because these names I saw in Ghana a lot. Okay, I met brothers with this name, and I remember I used to look at the TV program. There was one brother with your name. He had a TV program in Accra. I used to always watch it, and his first name was Kwesi. I remember him very well. I still see his face. Every afternoon I would turn into his program to watch his program. So my brothers and sisters, I must conclude here now, and I'm honored as your elder to talk to you about our history. And all I ask from you is your support and your love and respect. This is all I ask of you. I never ask you for any money. And I would like for you to subscribe and have other Africans and other non-Africans subscribe as well, because I'm not discriminatory against anyone, because Black people are universal. But I am against those who fight us and those who hurt us. And that's what I'm against. One more thing, I will finish. I want to recap on this. I want this understood, brothers and sisters. In Niger, in the corridor right now, we have to do something. The Americans are thrown out. The French are thrown out. A good thing. The Russians are coming in. I'm 60% happy to see it. I'm kind of worried as well. But on the same token, the Russians have a different mindset than the Western Europeans. We have to admit that. We have to also admit that Russian President Putin likes Black people, no doubt about it, because he opened up his vault. He said, look, you Western racists have been promoting a white Jesus for all these centuries. I'm going to clear this up. He opened up his vault, and now it's all through YouTube. even him getting a discussion saying that now all of the icons placed in the church will show a black Christ. How many are doing that in America or in Canada or in France or in Spain or any other place? None. They're upset with Putin because he's a Tubab. He said, no, Jesus was a black man. And all the disciples and the Israelis, the Hebrews, all were black. You have to give a Tubab his credit who does this. And Putin has a healthy relationship with black leaders. Also, Putin has allowed African Americans to come. Even in his speech about 2 years ago, or maybe longer, he told African Americans to leave. He said, you come to Russia. He said, we don't discriminate against you here. We don't have the driving while black issues. He's urged Muslims to migrate to his country. He supports the biggest Muslim population in Europe. So we have to look at those things, and he's warming up to our Sahelian governments. We have to take issue and talk about that. And I did a little bit today. Let me see here. Our history and current affairs. Yes, pretty much so, brother. I try to study as much as I can, and it helps me because I did have an African history degree. It's helped me tremendously. But when I came to Africa, and I'm going to touch on that in another segment as well, when I come to Africa, my knowledge really took off. I mean, tremendously. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I sit down and I can't believe it. When I came back on my continent to live, I saw Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's bounty that he gave me. When I came back here to live among African people after my ancestors were taken from the continent. So this is something. Matt is really Matt wishes a kind word. Yes, and Kwame, he also talked about this in his book, the Africans who wrote the Bible, about all of these names that is used, they're Khan names. Beautiful, beautiful book, brothers and sisters. And again, those who showed up late, this is what I'm talking about. You have to get this. You got to get this book for all Africans to read this so you can get a better understanding of our history, especially in Egypt, what happened and how these names, and this is backed up now by DNA. The DNA of the royal mummy showed that it's a haplogroup that's prevalent among West Africans. Can you believe that? And African Americans, because what African Americans were taken from where? West Africa. We support this haplogroup as well, not the Europeans. So our brother here breaks down all of these names. He gets into the history. He talks about the Hebrews, who they were. Beautiful book. You must get this. Okay. Musa went into South Africa, not Israel, after leaving. I don't know about that. That's another issue in itself. We know that he went to Habasha and whatnot. And where he got his commands, I'm not sure of that, to be honest. That's up into dispute, but we do know that he did go into what we know as the Jazira Arab. He did go there. It wasn't Jazira Arab at that time. But that is a big contention, and a lot of scholars are debating that today. And that's I can't get into that now because even I'm not quite sure as well. For me to discuss that without the proper knowledge, it'd be kind of wrong for me to do that. Thank you very much, brother. Yes, and thank you for the kind words, and to all of my brothers and sisters everywhere you may be who support me. I really appreciate that. Have my other brothers support me. All you have to do is just subscribe. That's all. You watch some of my videos, spread them sometimes. That's fine. But if I have your support by you subscribing, that warms my heart immensely, because that means that you do have some respect for your elder and we have to. We're African people. We're not Tuba. We're African people, and we have respect for our elders. Okay, and because they came before us, my mistakes, I'm trying to tell you so that way you don't make your mistakes. So when you become an elder, the younger generation will come to love, to respect you, and listen to you. This is our African custom. This is where we handle business on this continent. That's the way our ancestors have raised us to be respectful of our elders. Why do we call many of our elders Baba? We have a reason for that. You don't find this in Europe. You don't find this in America. You don't find this in Canada. See? But we have respect for our elders. See? We have respect for our elders. Let me see one more thing and I quit here. Moses is Akhenaten and his yes. I read about this too. There's a genotype that's also very interesting. I possess that on my mom's side. It's LO1, I think it's called. LO1 1A1. I think I have that on my mom's side. You find this DNA in South Africa and in Southwest Africa, all the way up into Egypt. It's very interesting. And that's another one of the prevalent haplotypes that's there in Egypt. They came because, again, the hieroglyphics, if you read the Book of the Dead, the Egyptians said they came from the south. This is where another contention too, brothers and sisters, with the white races. They're trying to make it as though the Egyptians came from Britain or they came from Norway. It's not true. They tell you in the hieroglyphics where they came from. They came from the beginning of the what? Of the Nile. That's where Lake Victoria, where's Uganda, the Tanzania, okay? They came from everywhere and they went up the canoes into all these areas we know today, Sudan, Eritrea, Somaliland, and Somalia, and so forth and so on, right? We understand that today. That's how they came. And so one of the strangest of the haplogroups is called LOA1A. I can't remember because I had that. When I found that on my mom's side, I was shocked. I looked at it, I said, what is this? You know who carries that also? Remember Nelson Mandela? He was a relative of mine. But what I learned now from DNA, he was a relative of mine. And that famous actress came from South Africa. She possesses this same haplogroup. You can find it in Egypt. That's why in my DNA, it shows Egypt. Yes, ancient Egypt shows my DNA, shows ancient Egypt. And that is, and it's true. I read something about Akhenaten. He did have this genotype. I heard that, but I could not find it. I found it here weeks back, but I couldn't find it during Ramadan. I tried to look for it again. I couldn't find it. But yes, it's true. So, brothers and sisters, I got to get ready to stop here because I'm still fasting. I'm fasting 6 additional days to get the Azure from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So I got to get ready to fix my meal and everything. Get ready for my my iftar here, inshallah ta'ala. So once again, brothers and sisters, thanks for showing up. I appreciate your support, love, and respect. And with that said, Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Anjurama.